Well, good afternoon, y'all. My name is Emily Reichert, and I'm the CEO of Greentown Labs. We are the largest climate tech incubator in North America. And today, I'm here in Houston, Texas, at Greentown, Houston, our newly opened second incubator location, offering 40,000 square feet of lab, office, and community space for up to 50 young climate tech companies, many of whom are sitting over there, our first 30 members. I'm so thrilled, though, to welcome our 16th U.S. Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, to Greentown Labs, Houston, to host a roundtable discussion focused on the American Jobs Plan and the City of Houston's opportunity and ambition to lead the global energy transition. But I'd like to start by acknowledging a few additional special guests today that we have with us. We are proud to be located in the 18th Congressional District, represented by Sheila Jackson Lee. Thank you so much for coming. I'd also like to welcome U.S. Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher of the 7th District. There she is. Here in Houston, U.S. Congressman Al Green of the 9th District, and Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia of the 29th District. And finally, the Mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner, who has been an amazing champion for climate action and for Greentown, Houston. I also have the pleasure of introducing our roundtable participants. Lisa Gonzalez, President and CEO of the Houston Advanced Research Center. Summer Harrison, Weatherization Director, Baker Ripley. Young Tsai Chen, Associate Professor in Seismology, University of Houston. Joe, Quidnet Energy. Robert Lane, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Sonova, a Greentown Labs partner. And Gretchen Watkins, President, Shell Oil Company, and Executive Vice President, Global Shales, also a Greentown Labs partner. For those new to Greentown, our mission is to provide climate tech startups with the community, resources, and connections, as well as labs that they need in order to thrive. Today, we support 150 startups across 2 locations who are tackling the greatest greenhouse gas emitting sectors with their technology, including electricity, buildings, transportation, agriculture, and manufacturing. Since our founding nearly 10 years ago, we have supported more than 350 startups that have raised more than $1.3 billion in funding. These startups have created collectively more than 6,500 jobs and as well have created $1.6 billion of regional economic impact. We are headquartered in Somerville, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, and Houston is our first out-of-state expansion, and we opened our doors here just 4 weeks ago. I'm often asked, though, why Houston? Well, as an incubator that supports entrepreneurs who are developing climate solutions, we understand that these solutions will only have an impact on climate change at scale. And the place where the capital, the assets, the expertise exist to do energy at scale is Houston, Texas. So we felt Houston was the place that we could have the biggest impact by creating a community of climate tech startups here in Houston and by building a bridge between 2 cities, Boston and Houston, who have unique but equally essential contributions to make in the fight against climate change. As well, those who haven't spent time in Houston may not understand the devastating impacts of flooding during Hurricane Harvey in 2017 and how they've changed the conversation here on climate change. This is only accelerated more recently with the tragic and sadly inequitable consequences of Winter Storm Uri. And that is why I believe that you will hear from its elected and business leaders here today. Houston is committed to leading the energy transition, both in the U.S. and globally. Houston knows how to do energy at scale, and that is what's going to be necessary for the transition that we need to happen in the time frame required to avoid the very worst impacts of climate change. We all need to work together, and we need the city of Houston, the energy capital of the world, in this fight. I know everyone around the table today, though, is grateful to the Biden administration for taking a strong leadership role on climate, from proposing critical investments in our infrastructure to supporting innovative solutions from the startups here at Greentown, Houston. These investments will position us for the future and confront the climate crisis at the same time. At a fundamental level, though, we all know, as we know all too well in Houston, this transition is not only about technology and infrastructure, it's also about people, it's about jobs, and it's about livelihoods. And that includes not only the people who are in the energy industry today who need to transition, but also those who were not part of Energy 1.0. At Greentown, we're committed to building a more equitable climate tech industry. And so I applaud the administration's commitment to ensuring that 40% of the benefits of the American Jobs Plan climate-related investments will go to disadvantaged communities. And so today's roundtable discussion could not happen in a better place than the city of Houston. Now I am excited to introduce Secretary Jennifer Granholm. Secretary Granholm is only the second woman to lead the U.S. Department of Energy and was previously the first woman governor of Michigan for 2 terms. I know Secretary Granholm is committed to achieving President Biden's goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050 by advancing cutting-edge climate solutions and building an equitable clean energy future for all. Welcome to Greentown, Houston, Secretary Granholm.
What a great introduction, and the same reasons why you came to Houston out of Boston, why you, Greentown, is the same reason why I'm here for the first trip that I have made as Energy Secretary post-COVID, or in the tail end of COVID, is because Houston is the energy capital, and as the Secretary of Energy, we want to be your partner in helping this transition. So I'm so proud to be joined today. I mean, Representative Green, Representative Jackson Lee, whose district this is. I know you're so proud of this particular facility and what it will portend. Representative Fletcher, who joined me this morning on visiting another Houston business in hydrogen. Mayor, I mean, really, could you be any more forward-leaning than being the mayor of Houston and being head of the climate mayors? I'm not sure what the title is, but leader of climate amongst the mayors. Thank you for your incredible leadership. Representative Garcia, I'm so excited that you are here as well. So thank you you got the whole delegation here as a united front on this challenge, which is how do we make sure that people understand that this clean energy transition is about opportunity and creating jobs instead of fearing it. It's about growing the pie. It's not about either or, it's both and. And so it's exciting. I look forward to our roundtable discussion. I know that my colleagues here want to say a word as well, but I just want to say before I turn it over to them, the President is completely all in on climate equaling jobs, battling climate change equaling jobs. He sees this as such an economic opportunity that the American Jobs Plan has a whole slug of climate-related investments that will help us to realize the jobs in this sector. So whether you're interested in making sure that, for example, Houston could become one of the demonstration sites for clean energy or carbon capture, use, and sequestration, if you care about weatherizing homes and making sure that we are doing what we can to have people live in buildings that are efficient. If you care about transmission, I think some of y'all do care about transmission, the investments in a transmission grid for America. If you care about manufacturing in America, that we should be building the supply chains for our energy future in this country, that we should be building the batteries. We say car 2.0, which is the electric vehicle from Michigan, and the guts to that, which is the battery, and the whole supply chain for that, then you would be supportive of this American Jobs Plan, an investment in America. So with that, I love the examples that we have around the table, but I'm so excited to be able to allow and ask my colleagues in governance, our great members of Congress, to say a word. Representative Jackson Lee, since this is your wonderful district, I wonder if you want to share a thought.
All of the above. Thank you. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this great city, and delighted to be honored to have you in the 18th Congressional District. And before I make a few remarks, to highlight our mayor, and he is, of course, without a doubt, an innovator in climate and energy renewables, and chairs the National Committee of Mayors for Climate Change or Climate Issues. Makes our job in Washington a lot easier because we can say that we're from Houston. And even as the energy capital of the world, we are open-minded. We're grateful for our neighbors. We have been the energy capital of the world for a very long time. That's our history. We don't walk away from it, but we see the bright and shining light. It was raining this morning. We didn't expect it. But on this afternoon, the sun is shining. And so I have spent my life career in oil and gas. And then coming to the United States Congress, I organized the Energy Brain Trust for the Congressional Black Caucus. Why? Because I realized that it was important in low and moderate income areas and for minority communities to be connected to the concepts of energy and innovation. So I'm very excited about work that we have been able to do, both in terms of, may I just extend an invitation for you to speak as other secretaries of energy have done at the Energy Brain Trust in the fall, so you'll get an invitation. I don't want to miss that. But the American Jobs Plan matches, I think, very aptly with our energy capital because, as I will respond later on in some of the questions that may be asked, I see the capability as Dr. Reichert. Let me thank you for matching our energy companies with innovation and climate change. And for many years, they have been doing research. Now it's time for that research to come in the forefront and collaborate with startups that are dealing with batteries, dealing with water for desalination, dealing with the storage or the capture of energy in small amounts, and also training. So my perspective is that the infrastructure, the idea of ensuring jobs, the idea of working with our core industries in their transition and transformation. We are an international city. We have something called the OTC. I can see that's an offshore technology company. Conference. I can see the many international partners coming, and the bulk of the discussion would be on renewables, innovation, startups, a whole new conversation. And so what I've tried to do, I just wanted to mention one or two, is to focus on clean drinking water, renewed energy grid, and also recognizing the large employment base that are in our corporate energy companies today. We have to walk and chew gum at the same time. We have to be able to recognize their institutionalism, if you will, but also with President Biden's vision and your vision, I can see clearly opportunities for collaboration, growth of jobs, and growth of opportunities. You happen to be in an area that is just short of the historic Third Ward. Large numbers of minority community members live in this area. This is a bright and shining light. And the door will be open for jobs and training, as well as it will be in technology. That is today, that is what the American Jobs Plan is. That is why we are so excited, and we are your partners. And I'm delighted to be here with my colleagues, Congressman Green, Congresswoman Fletcher, and Congresswoman Garcia. When you see us, we are certainly of like mind as it relates to climate change, and certainly here to be able to be fighters, thinkers, and innovators in the United States Congress on behalf of the administration and working with you. So welcome again, and thank you so very much.
Representative Green, maybe.
Thank you very much. I'm greatly honored to be a part of this august body. If I may, I'll remove my COVID mask and reveal my COVID beard. I try to groom myself, but these masks don't help a lot. Dear friends, Madam Secretary, you are so eupeptic. I mean, you generate energy yourself, and you have inspired me just listening to your brief commentary. So I'm really looking forward to the great things that I know you'll be doing. You mentioned the grid earlier, and I want you to know that I am absolutely pleased that you mentioned the grid because I spent about 5 days in Houston. That was the longest winter of my life because of some of the things that happened with the grid. It's exceedingly important that we give some focus and some attention to the grid. I also want to let you know that I appreciate your coming to my town. This is Greentown. As you can see, we have the walls readily painted in a nice color. I happen to like it. Lady has on a nice mask across from me. I like your mask, ma'am. But seriously, the energy sources in this country are not unlimited, and the transition has to be made. And to have an incubator in Houston, Texas, that is going to lead in this process of transition is exceedingly important. And these things don't happen by accident. You have to have someone who's willing to lead and make a difference. Our Mayor Sylvester Turner has demonstrated that he is a prolific leader. He is innovative. He seems to find his way into the places where we are most needed. And so, Mayor, I thank you for what you have done, and I'm greatly appreciative that you allowed me to be a part of this assembly today. Of course, Ms. Fletcher, I have to acknowledge because she sits on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which does a lot of things, but nothing more important than energy, in my opinion. And I want to thank the President. President Biden has made it clear, perspicuously so, that he is pro-energy transition and that he wants to make sure that we don't find ourselves with blackouts in this country. This is the greatest country in the world. I love my country. I appreciate what you're going to do. I thank the President, and I look forward to doing great things with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Fletcher.
Thank you so much, Secretary Granholm. I think I can speak on behalf of all of us in saying how thrilled we are that you chose to make your first trip as the Secretary of Energy here to the energy capital of the world, and it is a real honor and pleasure to have you here. And I join absolutely in the sentiments of my colleagues that watching you engage with folks here at Greentown Labs and throughout the day has really been just inspiring because I think that you are bringing a real enthusiasm and thoughtful approach to the many challenges ahead of us, and that's something that we do every day here in Houston, and we're so proud to show off for you what we have happening here, and Greentown Labs is a huge part of that. So Dr. Reichert, thank you so much for convening this group, bringing us together, giving us the opportunity to have this conversation this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to the dialogue about what we are doing and what we can do into the future. And in Houston, we really are all about innovation and partnerships. I always like to say this is a welcoming community, and there's no one who embodies that better than our mayor, Sylvester Turner. We feel here that we don't really care where you come from, and we don't care when you got here. We're just really glad you're here every day, whether it's just for a day or if you want to move here and become a part-time Houstonian or a full-time Houstonian. And there's so many people who've moved here from around the world that bring their expertise in the energy business and in all kinds of work and in life to make this community the most diverse city in the United States of America. So it's really fitting that you are here, and I'm grateful to be here with my colleagues in our Houston congressional delegation, Congresswoman Garcia, Congressman Green, and of course, Congresswoman Jackson Lee here in the 18th Congressional District, and also to see so many of the people who are here for this roundtable. I bumped into several people I already knew and have gotten to work with who have moved their businesses here to Greentown Labs because of the exciting and innovative things that are happening here. And so I just think it is a real testament to who we are and what we're trying to do here. And I have said for a long time that to address the climate crisis, the world needs Houston. And we're here today to show that we are going to deliver. We have an incredible coalition of people who are working every single day to innovate and create and think about what the future looks like. And I know that's your priority, as well as to think about what that means for the people who live here and across the country, focusing on jobs and the American Jobs Plan and making sure that no one is left behind, and that really we are all moving forward together into a brighter future. So I'm really excited for the conversation. I thank you for the opportunity today.
Great, thank you. I feel like, let's do this, let's go. All right, Representative Garcia.
Well, thank you, Madam Secretary, and I can't tell you how happy I am and pleased to be able to say those words. Madam Secretary, congratulations, and I'm so pleased that you're here with us in Houston, and I represent an area that also includes South Houston, Pasadena, Jacinto City, and Galena Park, and it's about also 77% Latino. So in my native language, bienvenida a Houston. Y espero que disfrute su día y que pueda hacer muchas de las cosas que nosotros hacemos aquí. And I just simply said welcome, and I hope you have a productive day, and I also hope that you're able to do a lot of things that we're already doing here already. As you know, we've already said it, Houston is the energy capital of the world, and I see no reason we cannot be the energy transition capital of the world. I think starting here is a good indicator and a great first step. Already, Texas leads in wind energy in many facilities in my district because my district is home to most of the petrochemical complex. We provide the workers. My district has the highest number of construction workers of any district in the country. So we're a working class district, and many of the industry in our area is already investing in very big ways in new energy. Recently, I met with the CEO of Exxon, and they're investing $100 billion in carbon capture and sequestration in my district. That's huge, and we should take notice because, again, as has been said by some of my colleagues, we've been here, we know energy, and we know what to do, and we want to continue to be a leader. So as we transition, I am just so happy that you're talking about climate equal jobs, because as I travel with workers in my industries, they are worried and they're watching carefully about what is going on. They worry because we have to ensure that we include workers at every step. It's about their jobs, it's their pensions, it's their future, it's their training, it's their families. Yeah. And we've got to make sure that those people that work in all the plants around my district know that things are changing, they've accepted it, but they worry about whether or not they'll really, really be included. So I'm happy to have visited with the folks at Ally. I mean, I think it's important that we start early in the training and the process to reassure especially the younger workers that there is going to be a future for them. So I anticipate we'll continue to work together on many of these issues, and I look forward to working with you and the President as we move forward. And I know that we're all anxious to see what his budget says. Yeah. It was released today. If you have any previews you want to share, please do.
It's good, it's good.
It's good, it's good. But I just want to conclude by saying that it is just great to be able to be in such a city that is always optimistic, always welcoming, Mr. Mayor, and is always ready to take a challenge. Yeah. We've survived some slumps in the economy, but we always find a way to keep going. So welcome again, and thank you for your hospitality.
Awesome, awesome. And that's a great lead into the man, the myth, the legend, the mayor.
Madam Secretary, let me just say we're delighted to have you here, and delighted that this is one of your first stops. Yeah. You know, outside of the D.C. area.
The first stop outside
the
of
first stop. And that's very much appreciated. I want you to know that. I do want to also acknowledge Dr. Reinhardt, because Greentown Labs is the largest incubator on the North American continent, and they've expanded here out of the Boston area to fulfill, you know, one of the goals that we highlighted in our climate action plan that we announced on Earth Day last year, and that is to create 50 clean 2.0 companies by 2025. And as we heard, they are well on the way at 30, and that's moving
Amazing.
forward.
In 4 weeks. Yeah. I mean.
So we are super excited It doesn't happen on its own. It does take collaboration. You know, Houston is the energy capital of the world, but if you just stand on that, you're going to miss in this competitive environment. We want to build a city for the future. And so it's important not only for us to be known as the energy capital of the world, but also to be leading on energy transition. And that's why I'm so happy to be here. And it didn't happen on its own either. The good news is working in collaboration with the energy industry.
Yeah.
We are making those things happen. I just want to lift up 3 points, and I'm going to turn it over to the panel. First, it may come as a surprise to learn that Houston is the nation's leading city in renewable energy. We use more renewable power than any other city in the United States. Really? And as of July 2020, the City of Houston facilities are 100% powered by renewables.
Wow.
That's in the City of Houston, not LA, not New York, right here in the City of Houston.
That is great. That's great leadership. Can I just say? That is really amazing.
And,
He is
when we talk about investing in communities that have been underserved and under-resourced, communities of color, in the Sunnyside community, in Congressman Green's district, just down the road, we are building what will be the largest urban solar farm in the United States on 240 acres, a landfill that opened up in the 1930s. It closed in 1970 under protest, and for the last 50 years, it has been sitting there contaminated, unused, pulling down this low-income community. But now we are reimagining those 240 acres and turning that in now to one of the largest urban solar farms that will generate enough power to power 5,000 homes, offset 120 million pounds of emissions annually, create green jobs, and with the American Jobs Program, it would really help to accelerate that program and move it forward. And it will address energy poverty that exists in many communities. And Houston is not the only one. There are a number of landfills in communities that have been underserved all over the city. And if we can do it here, it can be done anywhere. So that's the Sunnyside project. Second, the partnerships are essential to the future of clean energy. And for us to reach our emissions goals, we have to have collaboration. And partnerships are at the heart of everything that we do right here in the city of Houston. There was a time prior to the Biden administration when we didn't have a federal partner. There was no state mandate. So in order for us to achieve our goals in accordance with the Paris Agreement, and if not sooner, we have to collaborate. And so I'm very proud of the energy industry in this city. Chevron, I see Barbara over there, has been a leading force in bringing Greentown Labs here. Right across the street is a building that we are turning into a huge building for startups and innovative technologies. And you're in the midst of the innovation corridor in the city of Houston. And so that's taking place. Shell, for example, is the sponsor of our Resilient Houston plan. BP is helping to build that Sunnyside solar farm that we talked about. And as a city, we have committed to electrifying 100% of our light-duty vehicles by 2030. But without a strong mandate, we've had to partner. So we founded Evolve Houston, a public-private partnership with Centerpoint, NRG, Shell, the University of Houston, our consultant, LDR, to help advance action of EV amongst leading Houston companies, 30% of our fleet, public and private, electrified by 2030, if not sooner. All of that is taking place with collaboration. We're not trying to move away from the energy sector. We're just working to move us forward. And so when you start talking about carbon capture, utilization, and storage, you know, ExxonMobil and others, I just met with them a week ago, the things that are taking place, and I hope you can come back, or others, when the U.S. Mayors, Conference of Mayors, meet in Austin in September, where you will see a number of CEOs from the energy sector talking about how we are moving forward to achieve those goals. That's how we do it in Houston. Several Week, the Offshore Technology Conference, and at the end of this year, the World Petroleum Congress will return back to the United States here in the city of Houston. It's been away from the United States for 32 years. It will come back. I gave your staff a letter because I know this has been your first trip. But we really would like for you to come and speak to the World Petroleum Congress, where more than 10,000 will be coming with a heavy focus on energy transition. That's important. And then lastly, decarbonizing the energy capital of the world won't be easy, and it will cost, and that's why we are so excited and so supportive of President Biden and yourself and what this administration is doing to moving us forward. Building for yesterday is building for failure. And we have to recognize that the climate is getting warmer. This area has faced 400- 500-year storms in the last 5 years. And so we have to do things differently, and we are committed to making that happen. And quite frankly, energy transition is one of the ways that we can make a better world for all of us. So excited to have you, glad that you are here, and now let me yield to you and to the panel.
How can anybody follow that, right? I mean, just amazing, amazing. And I know you all have acknowledged the mayor's leadership, but I just am really in awe of your willingness to stand firm on the transition being opportunity. And so thank you for that and for your example. You mentioned 3 things. I think the 4th big thing that you did was to convince Dr. Reichert to bring Greentown to this area. And so let me start the panel by asking you a question, Dr. Reichert. So you started this similar version in Boston, and you've seen a lot of these startups. And I'm wondering, give us a sense, because of your experience in this space, where, as we would say in Michigan, where's the puck headed with respect to clean energy? Where is the biggest opportunity that you see coming down the pike? What should we be looking for?
Well, thank you for the question. And I really think that there are so many different opportunities that the energy transition affords that it's hard to pick one. And as we say here at Greentown, we love all of our children equally, so we never highlight one particular startup. But I will say that the focus areas of Greentown and the startups that we see are really, as you saw on the tour, they span companies that are deeply diving into technology and addressing innovation, all the way to those that are addressing workforce and also addressing the business models of the future that we're going to need to deploy these technologies on a massive scale. So when I think about what particular areas that we see really where the future is going, I mean, in the Texas context and specifically in the Houston context as well, I mean, anything having to do with grid or resilient grid is popping up first and foremost. And honestly, that's been a trend in Boston for many years. I say of all the sectors that we support, which are electricity, buildings, transportation, agriculture, and manufacturing, electricity is an area that just has so many opportunities and also can create so many different types of jobs. So you are talking about everything from energy storage at utility scale, where you're going to need PhD-level chemists to figure out the chemistry. But then you're also talking about how do you have EV vehicles be charged when and where you want them, perhaps by portable EV charging. And I'm giving 2 examples of a company named Form Energy and another named Spark Charge that are both out of our Boston incubator. So the range, I think, with the electricity sector is very great and affords lots of different opportunities. Transportation in general, I think, is a very hot area. I think Houston has the opportunity to not only be a place where we think about the big industrial technologies like carbon capture and hydrogen, but also about how do you make a major American city be a place where you are transitioning to using mostly clean energy. It is it is a challenge, right? But we've got cities like Phoenix, Atlanta, Los Angeles, who are all these big spread out cities. So Houston could be the model of how you do this. And I think that the leadership here understands that. So there's kind of a smart city question there, and transportation is very wrapped up in that. Modernizing our built environment is another place that certainly was highlighted in the American Jobs Plan, but buildings are a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions, and there are so many different ways that we can be tackling those, and we see that at Greentown. And then there are these deep decarbonization challenges about which we have only started to get involved. How do we decarbonize the manufacturing sector? That goes to things like hydrogen, carbon capture, and all of those technologies we're just starting to see at some of the companies at Greentown diving into that, but I expect that we would see more over time. So those are all areas that I think are impactful, particularly to Houston, but in the broader context of how do we decarbonize all of our sectors of our economy, and then also how do we build a resilient infrastructure and make sure that people have the jobs that they need going forward.
Yeah, great points. I'm really interested in the city resiliency question, given the repeated storms, and how we can literally build back better and build back more resilient as they happen. Those are great questions. You mentioned the transmission system. I mean, another thing I know the president is very interested in is making sure, as I mentioned, the supply chains are all here. On our transmission grids writ large, we don't build any of like the big towers that you see, the transformers either. We don't even build them in the U.S. We get them from countries that may be economic competitors. So why wouldn't we be building them here? So there's opportunity both in sort of manufacturing, traditional, but manufacturing the means to that clean energy future. Lisa, I want to turn to you if I can, Lisa Gonzalez. So HARC, and you'll have to describe for folks what that is, was awarded a grant, I know, from our Solar Energy Technology Office. I think it was $500,000. And I just want you to describe sort of what kind of a grant like that can do, and what you see as, I mean, you're here in a state where solar is, you're the #2 state in solar. You're the #1 in wind and #2 in solar. So what are the barriers that exist that need to be torn down in order for us to see greater widespread adoption of solar?
Well, thank you for the question, and it's an honor to be here with you, Madam Secretary, and our honorable members of Congress and Mayor Turner. To start with, to describe HARC, HARC is a nonprofit organization here in the greater Houston region. We were founded in 1982. And we're a sustainability research organization, and our mission is to provide independent research and analysis on sustainability issues such as clean energy, air quality, water resources, and climate. And your question about how the importance of funding, such as that grant program through the Solar Energy Technology Office, how important that is to the work that we do. I can't emphasize it enough, how important federal funding is to the research and development work that our teams do with the diverse array of partners that we have that span private and public sectors. That particular grant from the Solar Energy Technology Office, along with funds, DOE funds from the Advanced Manufacturing Office, is being used to conduct research through an initiative called Powered for Good. And the partners, the diverse group of partners that are working on that program are working to bring solar and energy storage products to low-income communities. And so the research that HARC and our partners are doing are helping to support the creation of those products. And already we've seen the launch of a company, Energy Well, which is a woman-founded business that brings 100% renewable energy and storage products to low-income communities. And the customers that they work with see savings of 25 to 30%, 25 to 35%. In their bills. And so, that's something that we're seeing here in the real world that could not be possible in the market without the investment from the Department of Energy in these types of partnerships and that type of research. And in terms of the barriers, that's a great question, and that's something that our researchers think about all the time. We do have a few ideas and things that we think about. The first is to create and develop innovative financial and incentive models to support the deployment of solar, also to develop things like green banks that can get financing and credit into the hands of small businesses and low-income communities. Another barrier in which DOE can and play a large part is to couple incentives focused on efficiency with solar and storage, so that we're not only making households more comfortable and more resilient, but we're also helping them to see cost savings in their utility bills. And incentives could go a long way to help that happen. One of the things that's happening here in Houston is we have a wonderful network of partners and organizations that are working on environmental justice initiatives around the city and around the region. And one of the things that would be wonderful to see is coordination between EPA and the Department of Energy to make sure that renewable energy and clean energy strategies are incorporated in these environmental justice initiatives. One of the things that we know is there's a direct connection between renewables and decreasing air emissions and decreasing greenhouse gases. So the degree to which we could leverage those types of projects and funding sources would be wonderful, not just for our organization, but for all of the organizations that are working on these important issues in the region. Another area that we think about is this concept of a strategic electricity reserve. Especially as it relates to matching the critical needs of households with both permanent and mobile sources of electricity, especially in times of crisis. During Winter Storm Uri, our teams led by Dr. Gavin Dillingham, who leads our clean energy program, evaluated a micro solar and storage array that was deployed in a neighborhood, and the households that used that were able to power things like small appliances for cooking, cell phones, medical devices. And these types of units can be deployed across neighborhoods and citywide across these different scales. And I guess the last point that I'd like to make, and this is something that DOE is already doing, but the continued work in this area would be so important, and that's to reduce the soft costs of solar. Yeah. NREL's solar app is a wonderful example of that kind of work to reduce the costs associated with permitting and interconnections, and there are partnerships in place with the City of Houston to further that work. And so just the continued support of those types of programs. We're so excited to be working in a city that's so forward-thinking as Houston, with the support of our congressional delegation and with this administration, who we truly see as partners in promoting these types of strategies and technologies.
That's great. Thank you for all of that great advice. This is, I'm here writing my notes down. I appreciate what you said about the solar app, because this solar app, for those of you who are in the solar space, you know that it takes often forever to get permits done. Yes. And every region, every local area is different. Every city's got their own rules. So this solar app has taken all of those inputs and put them in, and no matter where you are, you can sign up with the solar app and boom, get a permit instantly, which, we have to have the city's partner, but it's just boom, reducing those soft costs. So that's very exciting. So, on buildings, super important. Homes are super important. So I want to ask Summer Harrison. Obviously, Baker Ripley is a partner in weatherization, which is another aspect, efficiency, et cetera. And I'm wondering, what can the Biden administration do to make your job easier, essentially, to weatherize more homes, to expand it? Obviously, money is important, but what would make it easier for you to do your work as well?
Well, thank you so much for inviting us to be here. So I can be here on behalf of Baker Ripley and the 600,000 neighbors we serve in Houston. But I'm also here to represent the 22 weatherization agencies in Texas who have been doing the work, who have been doing DOE weatherization for, I think, our company for over 25 years. So I am very happy, and this may be one of the first times somebody has asked me, what can we do to make it easier to do DOE weatherization or to do our job? So I really appreciate that. I am not a natural speaker like all of the guests we have here, so I may rely on my notes a bit. But so, you know, there's some things I'd like that Congress and Biden administration to think about as they're preparing to expand the funding for weatherization. In the first instance is to really look at early funding to develop a workforce for weatherization. You know, as a building professional, DOE weatherization is the most complicated program I've ever worked in. And that's because of the extensive diagnostic testing that we do for every home. Our assessors or inspectors have to have months of training, become certified in order to do the work. And then our contractor crews, you know, are not used to going in and weatherizing a home because they're going into older housing stock. And they really need to know how to go in and to do air infiltration reduction and things like that. That'd be the first thing that I would ask for, is the ability to develop this workforce so that we are ready when we get a lot more funding. Something I want to bring to that you're probably aware of, but right now, our programs and contractors are reporting major material shortages. Fiberglass, as of this week, you just cannot find it. I've heard that in June, there will be no flex ducts to be had to replace the HVAC ducts. The glass shortage is so bad that we're not unable to get windows for 12 to 16 weeks.
Wow.
For one window. This includes many large price increases that everybody has been hearing about in the construction materials. And so I'd ask the administration to consider how they can address that and help get production online and moving forward. Because we can receive a lot of funding, but we won't be able to spend it if we don't have the materials and the workforce to do so.
Sure.
And the last thing I wanted them to think about is there's a lot of different reports that I've been reading about different funding coming for rehabilitation of low-income housing stock, solar panels through maybe some state funding. And so I want everybody in Congress to think about combining these efforts with the weatherization program and use the Community Action Agency network and the nonprofits we have here in Houston to do this work collaboratively. One of the things that we learned, and Mayor Turner, I know you know this after Hurricane Harvey, we received millions and millions in private funding to repair flooded homes, and Baker Ripley and I worked on that. But money came so fast and they wanted results so quickly that you had agencies doing their own thing out there, and it was very inequitable recovery for our neighbors. Some homes were fully rehabilitated, others was just minimum habitability. But our group of home repair agencies, we've learned from that and we've come together as a collaborative. And whenever funding came available after Winter Storm Uri, we all know each other by first name, we talk to each other, work is handed out based on our abilities, the areas we can serve. And I think those federal funds coming in that are all meant to address the housing stock should be brought in together and collaborated on together. Just one more thing, if I can say, just on making it easier, is DOE and their weatherization program is much harder to run for us than our other weatherization program, which is funded by Health and Human Services. It's the LIHEAP program. We actually prefer to use LIHEAP funding because we can fully weatherize a home. It's very prescriptive. We start with the measures that make the most impact, and we start going down the list. And so for our neighbors, I prefer to say, let's use this funding, because I know that I can do everything that I can or that home needs. For DOE, the energy audit tool, it's very outdated. It was created with the northern regions in mind and the heating zones there. It wasn't designed for hot, humid climates like Houston. You know, being the energy capital, we have very low fuel costs in comparison, right, to the rest of the states. And the energy audit tool looks at how much savings are going to be created by investing in weatherization measures. When we run the tool, there aren't a lot that will rank, as we say, have good return on investment because our lower fuel costs, because the energy audit tool hasn't been updated in over 10 years to show the new pricing. Over time, prices go up, and now a work order from 2020 has much fewer items than it did in 2010. We're not seeing solar screens, low-E windows, and sometimes attic insulation. So what I would like to ask, if you would consider more of a prescriptive priority list so we can fully weatherize a home.
I love this. I mean, I don't feel defensive at all because I'm just brand new to the office. So I want to know, where are the problems? So this is super specific and helpful. Yeah. So thank you for that. And I'm going to get your phone number after this so that I can have you talk directly to the weatherization office inside of our.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the feedback. I really appreciate it. Mayor Turner, I know that you may be on a little bit of a schedule, but I want to catch you before you go, because I want to ask you. You raised the issue of environmental justice and communities that have been left behind, and I wanted you to give us advice as well. What should DOE, what should the administration be doing to support jobs and in climate justice, really, and in place-based strategies?
Number one, it's difficult. Well, you cannot talk about climate change without talking about resilience.
Yeah.
All of those are intertwined and much aligned. And then what you will find is that in all of these events, extreme weather events, many of these same communities are hit over and over and over again. So in addressing, for example, energy poverty, and I know Lisa mentioned, for example, mobile units, in a sense, being placed in these communities ahead of time. We need more of those type of things, more of those type of innovative strategies. Just like I talked about the Sunnyside community and the landfills, we need more dollars of resources being circulated to those areas. That will create jobs, revitalize community. I think when we look at it, we need to talk about what do we need to do to revitalize these communities, to transform them as quickly as we can, and to look at different strategies that can really move into these communities and turn them around. So when you talk about weatherization, whether you talk about energy poverty, all of those things connect. Those connect. A lot of times we don't spend as much time talking about environmental justice. Even when we start talking about climate tech, clean energy, it's almost as if these environmental justice is kind of like over here. We touch on it, but you really have to bring that conversation to the very front end. It has to be a part of the strategy. And Madam Secretary, I will tell you one of the main reasons why I chose to lead the U.S. climate mayors is because I was a part of all of these conversations. But when talking about equity or the lack thereof, or these communities that were underserved were really not being talked about at the very beginning. And so now the conversation is how, when we are talking about clean energy, resilience, making these changes, how are we impacting these communities that have been underserved? What are the resources? Making sure that the jobs recovery plan directly in these communities, whether they're on the East End, like in Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia's district, or as it relates to Congressman Green, or Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Congressman Fletcher. All of these communities have these areas, neighborhoods that have just been on the periphery. And that's a part of the climate change plan that we put in place. For example, we have built in a climate equity coordinator as a part of our climate change. I mean, it's a climate equity coordinator. Every initiative that we're putting forward, we run it by that climate equity coordinator to say, okay, how is this improving these neighborhoods and making them better? So when we're talking about energy, I don't think you're going to talk about a subject that that will touch on these communities more so than the energy initiatives. Landfills, water, the air they breathe, transportation-related items all impact these marginal communities. And that's what I find so exciting about this conversation.
Yeah.
Because the health disparities flow from. Totally. And then lastly, what I would say, there's a professor at Texas Southern, Dr. Robert Bullock.
I had lunch with him today.
Who has been dealing with environmental justice issues for the last 30 years. But only now, even under this administration, has he been found and brought to the front of the line. Because it's important for Dr. Bullock to be in these conversations. And then lastly, the energy companies that we have in the city, and I do want to commend the Shells and the Chevrons, the BP. I do want to commend them because they are working with us at the table and now going directly into many of these communities to transform them from the better. And what the Biden administration is doing, it can accelerate it even more.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All
I
right.
apologize.
I know you got to go. You got to go.
I've got a number of African ambassadors from all over the world that are in town, and
he's a busy guy. I know, and we're running a little bit late, so I apologize for that for you. But thank you so much for
and I do hope that and I don't want to put you on the spot, but please look at your calendar and see if you can make that work.
Okay.
I've already told him to put your name on the list.
All right. No
thank
pressure,
you, Mr.
no pressure.
Congressperson, thank you. I've got
right.
my council members that are here as well. I got a few of them here.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. They're voting on my budget, so I have to acknowledge them.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much. Oh my goodness. Okay, we want to make sure we hear from everybody, and we've got a few more left, and we'll try to be brief, and we'll all be brief in our conclusions too, because I know we're late. But all right, Dr. Zhang Zhang. So you, from the University of Houston, congratulations, because you just got an award today, and I want you to explain the research and the award, and as I always say, in a way that my 86-year-old mother will understand. So have at
it. Secretary Granholm and congressional leaders and other industry leaders, very glad to be here to be on this roundtable discussion. So, so the word is awarded to University of Houston and Los Alamos National Lab. So I'm going to be leading the project. So it is a word in response to a DOE call called Emerging CO2 Storage Technologies, Avoiding Felt Seismicity and Fluid Migration Through caprock. So many years ago, we were talking about energy independence, and now we don't seem to have a problem about that because there are a lot of oil gas we can extract due to our innovation in technology. But there's a consequence where there are a lot of CO2 released in the air, and the amount of CO2 is enormous. So 5 billion tons released in the U.S. in a year. If you collect all the petroleum we used, crude oil, that's less than 1 billion tons. So we have to, we extract, we use 1 billion tons of crude oil. We generate so many jobs in Houston, in Texas, and elsewhere. But right now, if we inject all the CO2 underground, that has to be 5 times. So the scale of the problem is enormous. So clearly, big challenge ahead, and also means big opportunities. So my research is about scale up the injection. Technical term is geological carbon storage. And we try to scale up to gigaton injection. We have to deal with earthquakes. So those fluid injected in the underground can disturb the tectonic stress And when there are faults and fractures in the subsurface, and the rock can slip on the faults and the fractures to create earthquakes. So my research is to develop an innovative algorithm to scan in a 3D fashion the subsurface to see where the fractures are, where the faults are. Then when you inject gigaton CO2 fluid in the rocks, so I can predict the seismic risk and the maximum magnitude of the induced earthquakes.
Awesome.
So that's my research, and I think this is, the energy and the energy transition and the CO2 problem, they are really a same problem. Houston, energy capital, we have a lot of people who are experts in subsurface technologies. And when you consider the scale of the problems, I think, their expertise can be transferred to address this problem. I think, I believe orderly energy transition in an orderly fashion is very important. So people can gradually change to, for example, experts in oil gas industry, they can begin to do geological carbon storage, problems.
It's great, because the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has said that we can't get to net zero carbon emissions without using carbon capture and sequestration. We want to make sure that as we inject, that we do so safely and that there is a way to identify where those places are. So your research is really going to be very helpful in that regard. I'm glad you got one of the DOE grants in that regard. So we look forward to using your modeling to be able to make sure we're making wise decisions about where it goes. Thank you so much. And Joe Zhao from QuidNet, such cool technology that you are responsible for. And by the way, it's Joe's birthday today. But anyway, in addition to that, maybe you can say a word about, first of all, what QuidNet does, because it's so unique. And then, and again, we're going to try to be brief, everybody. So your elevator pitch on QuidNet and why public funding is important for an entity like QuidNet.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us at this venue and for the question as well. Fundamentally, I think to get to where we want to go from a clean energy perspective, we have to do clean tech energy technology development. And that's tough tech. That needs capital, that needs time, and that's finally in a market that's very averse to risk. And we live that every day. At QuidNet, what we do is we leverage the oil and gas workforce to drill wells in the ground to store energy over long durations in the form of pressurized water in the subsurface. So just like pumped hydro on Lake Michigan, instead of pumping water up the mountain, we pump water down into the well to store that energy, and
but
we
it's
want
smaller.
that back. Much smaller, much more modular, lower cost, and it's no longer reliant on mountains. The capital, the risk, the time involved when it comes to tough tech development generally is always going to result in a very intimate collaboration between government and the private sector. That's true of the early incubation periods. That's also true of commercial scale-up. We're extremely thankful to be working with the DOE, for Scott Leitzman's team at ARPA-E, for Alejandro's team over at EERE, have funded us to do that research and deployment in actually the state of Texas. We have a well that's 3 hours west of here, as part under one of those programs, where we're demonstrating storage pressures equivalent, and this is flat farmland, but we're demonstrating storage pressures that's equivalent of 3 times the height of the ARPA reservoir at Ludington.
Wow.
And so we're very excited on that. I think what's ahead of us is that commercial scale-up, which is going to be equally tough. And that's where you go from smaller wells to bigger wells, a handful of wells, to eventually hundreds of thousands of wells that's needed to, I think, meet the administration's goals on clean energy. At the end of the day, I think electricity is going to be such an important platform for us to meet our climate goals. And we're just so excited to do our part to contribute to that. So by pumping water down wells instead of up mountains, we think that we can provide clean, low-cost, and reliable electricity, and do that in a way that is dispersed, that allows low-income communities to benefit from the economic uplift that mobilizes the oil and gas industrial base in Houston, in Appalachia, instead of relying on potential minerals from, let's say, more vulnerable supply chains. And ultimately, I think our goal is to do this in a way that we can answer the question from the drillers and the oil and gas workers of where's my clean energy job?
Right.
In Texas, in Appalachia, and other parts of the country.
That's
so thank you so much for your support.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, you often think of hydropower as dams, huge, massive capital investments. This is sort of a distributed version of that, and very cool technology, very clean technology, and we look forward to big things, many of them from you. So thank you so much. All right, Robert Lane from Sonova, right? Right. So I wonder if you can share with us a bit of your perspective on both sort of job creation and energy freedom, if you will, energy independence, and how people view that in terms of their ability to generate their own energy future.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. For those who are unfamiliar, Sonova is a leading solar and battery.
You might want to lean a little bit in. There you go.
I am leaning in. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Sonova is a leading residential storage and battery, solar and battery storage service provider, headquartered right here in Houston, Texas. Our goal is to be the source of clean, affordable, and reliable energy to power energy independence, as you've certainly indicated in your introduction. We operate across the United States and a number of its territories. We have well over 100,000 customers, and we're still growing at a very rapid pace. We have created in our own company well over 500 jobs, which we're very proud to say is a very good beginning of 70% of a workforce that is people of color, and we continue to focus on our own internal diversity and our own internal inclusion. At the same time, through our network of dealers, we have over 500 dealers. These are the independent local entrepreneurs that originate for us. We have announced already publicly we expect that number to double by the time we get to the end of 2022. And this supports tens upon tens of thousands of additional jobs in the private sector who are building solar for us and who are originating new customers. Right now, the solar workforce across the country is a little over 200,000 jobs. In order to reach the administration's climate plans, which, by the way, we fully endorse and are trying our best to be a part of, we estimate that by 2035, we're going to need over 900,000 jobs within this sector. And really what we look forward to getting in cooperation with the Department of Energy and other departments are the tools to help train that next workforce. You talk about the getting the job for the oil and gas worker. We talk about getting the jobs for the folks in your district, Representative Garcia. We want to get those jobs and a whole lot more, and we really appreciate your help in helping us get the resources to train, whether it's through community college trade schools, and through other sources as well. I want to keep it as, I'm going to be the briefest speaker you have today, ma'am, and keep it right there. I will add just one other area, and a number of folks have touched on this as well, which is that we're also dedicated to bringing solar to the low and moderate income individuals as well. Residential solar has been giving the independence that when we take a look at all these climate change induced disasters, right down to Uri, or as we call it here, Snowvid. It was a horrible disaster that showed the true vulnerability of the grid. It also showed that decentralization and decarbonation both are part of the solution for us to be able to have that 21st century ability to deliver electricity and electricity services to all individuals. And we continue to work to bring those not only to those who have traditionally used it as a way to lower their own energy costs, but also to the low and moderate income individuals. We've been working with some members of your department to do that in a number of communities, including in Puerto Rico, Native American lands, and elsewhere. We'll certainly continue to do so. But I think that that's certainly another area where the Department of Energy can be a big help to us to help bring that third-party ownership of residential solar systems to give everyone the same energy resilience, affordability, and independence that we can.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Really, really inspiring and really hopeful in terms of both jobs, but also the planet. Thank you. Thanks for the advice and the suggestions too. Really important, really. All right, so we finish with one of the biggest players in fossil fuels, right? So Shell, Gretchen Watkins from Shell, so glad that you are here. And, you know, Shell has been really forward-leaning with respect to climate, which people may not be aware of, that I think it was Shell that was one of the first to say that you were going to have yourself 100%, or excuse me, net zero carbon emissions by 2050, which is pretty amazing. So I'm wondering from your perspective, you know, Shell ends up being a fossil fuel company, but maybe even looking more broadly at energy. And I'm wondering how you are internally viewing carbon capture, use, and sequestration, as well as hydrogen, as a way of solutions to the carbon pollution that historically has come from the fossil fuel industry.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. It's great to be here, and thanks for inviting Shell to be a part of this, and thanks also to the congressional representatives that are here today. It's really great to be here. Yes, as you said, Shell has committed to being a net zero emissions company by 2050, and we've got both short and long-term goals that are set to help us get there. And for Shell, that means not only Scope 1 and 2 emissions, but Scope 3 too, which is really the emissions that are created by the products that we sell.
Yeah.
And so when we think about the products that we sell, then we think about, all right, well, we need to actually start offering more low and no carbon products. And that's where something like hydrogen comes in. And so hydrogen, you know, today actually can be created in quite a large scale of quantities from natural gas. Blue hydrogen has that carbon captured associated with it. And then, of course, there's green hydrogen as well, which is created from renewables. Still quite a bit more expensive than blue hydrogen, the green hydrogen, but it's technically possible. And, you know, we very much view that as technology progresses and innovations occur, that price will come down. Hydrogen, I think we see it as extremely important because it provides a portable fuel that can be used to decarbonize some sectors that are frankly very difficult to decarbonize, like shipping or heavy transport, big trucks that go on the road. And hydrogen is very much a solution for those types of sectors. The other thing I would say is that carbon capture, you know, certainly with natural gas turning into hydrogen creates blue hydrogen, but carbon capture very much has to be part of a net zero emissions plan for a company or a country, for that matter. And with the U.S. stepping into that place also of wanting to be net zero by 2050, carbon capture and sequestration must play a role there. One of the things that Shell has become known for over the last few decades is creating scenarios. And just this past December, we created our very first U.S.-focused scenario that basically shows a way that it's both technically and economically possible for the United States to become net zero by 2050. Hydrogen plays a huge role, and carbon capture and sequestration plays an enormous role in doing that, because when you talk about jobs, as a number of people have talked about, I mean, it winds up protecting jobs in manufacturing today. In some places like the making of cement, the manufacturing of steel, again, industries that are very difficult to decarbonize, carbon capture is the solution there. Mm-hmm. Shell has proprietary technology for carbon capture that can actually capture over 95% of the carbon that's created from combustions, and so the technology is out there. One of the things that we think would be very useful in this country is a price on carbon, or some sort of carbon market that sets an even playing field. Very much believe that capital will flow into technologies like
another
carbon
weird,
capture.
this is just another weird thing, right? That you would have an oil and gas company saying we want a price on carbon, right?
Well, again, it might be weird, but we truly believe.
No, I don't mean in a negative way. I mean, it's just an unusual, I mean, it speaks.
Well, but if you think about how you're going to decarbonize, whether it's an industry or a country or a community, a city, we work very closely with Mayor Turner also on the resiliency of the city of Houston. You really do have to have a way for capital to be attracted to investing in things like carbon capture. And so a carbon market, again, one that's an even playing field for all, I mean, is absolutely a way to do that. And so that's one of the reasons why we believe that that would be a good outcome. I think that the last thing I would say, and kind of linking to something one of the other panelists said, is that from a job perspective, carbon capture and sequestration very much utilizes a lot of the skills and competencies that my industry has today. So engineering, construction, project management, geological expertise. And so there are jobs that are created when you have capital flowing into things like carbon capture, and skills that are used today in one a part of the energy cycle can be applied again in another part of the energy cycle going forward. And yeah, and I think I'll just wrap up by saying, I very much believe that innovation plays a huge role, and that this country is an innovative country. As an engineer myself, this gets me very energized and very motivated, and so I'm really, really happy to be here with you today, and thanks again for inviting us.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for showing how it can be done, how you can lean in and not, not run from the change, but face the wind, actually get in front of the train rather than being run over by it. Your example is really wonderful, and thanks for bringing up the example of how these technologies create jobs in and of themselves, not just manufacturing the equipment, which is one thing, but also installing them, maintaining them, designing them, et cetera. So very, very important. Thank you so much for being here, for being so supportive of Greentown. So we've heard from everybody. I'm just going to do a popcorn spot check with our representatives, given what you've heard and given how important the American Jobs Plan might be to this area. I'm wondering if just very quickly, if you have a quick thought on what part of the American Jobs Plan would be most beneficial to Houston, in your opinion. Now I'm just asking the members of Congress. Don't worry, y'all. Just asking the members of Congress. I don't know if any of you want to go first or, yeah. There you go.
I mean, I'll just say real quick, it's jobs, jobs, jobs. I mean, jobs hold families together. And in my district, as I described, is a working class district. They watch and worry, but I think that the rescue plan gives them a lot of help. I mean, when the president said help is on the way, he's sending it. So thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
This has been marvelous. Thank you so very much. And I want you to know that when I came to Congress, we'll start talking about history a long time ago. Oil was king, and when you went to Congress, just like John Dingell used to fight for the automotive industry,
of course.
We had sort of a unpleasant face, meaning that the members would look askance because those are industries that were known for emissions. What I've seen and why this is such an important day and an important meeting and an important plan by the President, American Jobs Plan, for me, it is clearly the revitalizing of manufacturing, the technology, the innovation that will come about with the Jobs Plan. It is also mobility. All of that plays into jobs. And it is also the recognition that low-income, moderate-income communities, African Americans, Latinx, Asian Americans, and others, have a relevancy to the idea of technology, innovation, energy, the grid, and that's what, if I might call them that, President Biden, Joe Biden, is saying by the American Jobs Plan. So that's what I see as being most important. And the cleanup, thank you to Shell, Chevron, Exxon are talking about cleaning up or responding to their own emissions. I will tell you that wasn't really a discussion a number of years back. They weren't discussing that. But I will also tell you that when we had an incident here, you'll remember about 2010, a real big one, and the multinationals came to Washington, the CEOs, and in a hearing I asked them, do you have an environmental sector part of your company? Each and every one said, a big one, a strong one. So I see this as being transformational for our industry, and putting the face that we are part of the American dream and a part of making America better. And that's what the American Jobs Plan. So I see great things coming. We want to be on the receiving end of some of those funds.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I hear you.
Thank you.
Either one of you?
I'll yield to the lady, the gentle lady from Texas.
Thank you, Congressman Green. And thank you for the question, Secretary Granholm. I think it's a great way to kind of wrap up today. And I think, you know, what we see in the American Jobs Plan, we see a couple of things. In your visit today, we see a real engagement and interest in what matters to people across the country, and we see that reflected in the American Jobs Plan. So I want to thank you again for being here. And I think that the focus that we see there on jobs and building back better, on thinking about our infrastructure in innovative ways, and really investing in jobs in the United States, investing in American industry, investing in the kinds of things we already do, and making sure we lead the world in all of these industries, you know, rethinking what we do. That's what we're seeing reflected in the ideas behind the American Jobs Plan, and I think that that's probably the overarching really important piece. And we see it here in terms of the conversation we've had today around energy and innovation and investment. And so I just want to say, as we're closing up, that I'm so grateful that you have been here, and I hope that what we see in your visit about the American Jobs Plan and talking to us is the kind of engagement and partnership that we know we hope to see and we are seeing from the Biden administration, and that we here in Houston are your partners in energy. We have the experience, we have the culture of innovation, and we have the will to lead not just our country but our world into our energy future. And we're so grateful for your partnership and your emphasis in the American Jobs Plan on making sure that that's exactly what we do right here in Houston. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I promise to be terse and laconic, pithy and concise. Your presence today has made this meeting on a scale of 1 to 10 and 11.
Oh my goodness.
And I think you merit a very special expression of appreciation from all of us.
Oh, that is so gracious. No, thank you.
Finally, this, I do appreciate the fact that LMI communities are being given some priority, because at the transition, usually these are the communities that are left behind. This time, this plan includes everyone. Let's leave no one behind. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And thank you all for coming. Thank you, Dr. Reichert, for hosting. Thank you, all you entrepreneurs, for creating jobs and for leading us into the future. Really appreciate it. Thank you all so much.
If I can make one statement, at the table, when you all have these discussions, can Texas be at the table now?
Texas
you see
is
who
at
we
the
are.
table. Texas is the table.
Dr. Reichert and all of these,
Yes.
we will be at the table.
Yes, you
we will be at
be.
the table.
All right.
All right.